Hi, everyone, and we're back for another. I don't know if we're calling this Yap versus Yap or just an AV Room podcast, vodcast talk today. But we're going to be talking today about the latest, some would say greatest, James Bond film, No Time to Die, which is no secret is the last one starring Daniel Craig, who decided to step out of those shoes after 15 years. We're not shooting this right after the movie theater, outside the movie theater like we've usually done, just because we didn't have the time and equipment to do it. But joined here by our old friend Bob Bloom.
Howdy.
So I thought, Bob, I haven't done one of these with you yet, and we're really enjoying doing them. I guess you call them podcasts, where they just have a video component. That way they can see our beautiful shining faces as we talk about the latest movie. But why don't I start with you? So if you've seen, we do have the studio, in a rare move, lifted the embargo for reviews early. So we've actually already posted the Film Yap's official review by Alec Toombs, which he raved about and says that as a result of this movie, Daniel Craig has now supplanted Sean Connery as his favorite James Bond. I'm definitely not going that far, but obviously he really raved about the film. So why don't I start with you? Because I think you're definitely a bit lower down the scale on No Time to Die.
First of all, you got to take into account age. I mean, in our group, I am probably, maybe beside you, the only one who has seen every James Bond movie on its initial release in the theaters and am old enough to remember it. So I started with Sean Connery, and as far as I'm concerned, he is James Bond. He set the template for everybody who followed. So, and the others, there are good ones, and there have been not so good James Bonds. But to me, it's Sean Connery.
Yeah. Well, I do like Daniel Craig. I would say he's probably my second favorite of the Bonds after Connery. Although it's like you say, they've the not just the actors, but the way the films were made, the eras they were made in, what they were going for, have really been different. I mean, Roger Moore made James Bond comedies. That was his shtick. And I know a lot of people like that. I saw somebody on Twitter said, give me Roger Moore James Bond, where it was just funny and loose, and he slept with everything that moved. So everyone kind of has their own favorite era of James Bond. What I like about the Daniel Craig, and I guess, is this the fourth one or fifth one?
Fifth one, I believe.
Fifth one and last one for him. And I think it's about a 15-year run, 16-year run. I think
Casino Royale was 2006.
Yeah, so that seems to be right about a good amount of time. Plus, that was what happened with Roger Moore. I think he was getting a bit long in the tooth towards the end there. I think he was the last ones where they had like him and Sean Connery came back and did his own Bond movie. They were both, I think, in their 60s, a little bit pushing it, although they both still looked great and did great. But what I liked about the Daniel Craig take on it was sort of a throwback to Sean Connery's, in that it was grim, it was tough. There's little filigrees of humor, but that was not what they were going for. They really wanted to make straight, grim, action-filled, diabolical villains, James Bond movies. And even, I think, more so in the first three James Bond films, an element of brutality to James Bond. And I don't use that word lightly. I mean, he was not supposed to be a straight-up hero. He was really, from the beginning, more of an anti-hero. A guy who did nasty stuff, killed people, licensed to kill and all that. And I like that. And though they definitely did soften him up over the last couple of movies.
Yeah, they did. And they tried to, and I don't know if this is trying to make him more politically correct, if they were trying to broaden the audience to maybe get more female viewers into the movie. Who knows? But yeah, they added a little more, what would be the right word? Sentiment, made him less of a, uh, what would be machismo,
Yeah,
you know,
Wolf. Yeah,
just, more understanding of women, more appreciative, more less seeing them as sex objects and to bed and seeing them as actual human beings.
yeah. There's no not to be too much of a spoiler. There are no Bond girls in this movie, which is to say the Bond girl is not just usually like his main love interest in the movie, but the variety of women that he usually sleeps with during the course of a Bond movie.
There's usually a pattern to a Bond movie where the first woman he meets and sleeps with actually gets killed, like,
Yeah,
the next reel after he sleeps with her, whether it be somebody he just meets, like the Masterson girl in Goldfinger, or, God, I don't remember her name, in Live and Let Die, Moore's first movie, I believe. So yeah, there are, that pattern seems to have been broken.
yeah,
So
definitely. So he does have his main love interest in this, which is Leah Sudol, if I'm pronouncing her name right, the French actress.
yeah,
And that's actually like his love interest, and they're together at the beginning of the movie, and again towards the end of the movie. There are two other notable female characters. Well, Naomi Harris as Moneypenny just turns up for a little bit, but Ana de Armas turns up as Paloma, who is a American CIA agent that he works with on this one extended sequence in Cuba, and that would be like a typical figure that would be a Bond girl in a previous era, where she would show up, they would kick some butt together, then they would sleep together, and off she would go. That doesn't happen. And this weird thing where she kind of shows up and she seems like she's a bit of a noob and doesn't really know her way around, but she actually turns out to be very capable. And he actually, I think when they part, has genuinely developed respect for her and expresses that, which is not something you would see in a previous era of Bond films. And the other big one is Lashana Lynch, who plays Nomi. And don't think I'm giving anything away, because at the end of the last Bond movie, he retired from the agency.
Yeah, from MI6.
Yeah, so she is now the new 007, and so obviously there's some tension there between them, some competition, and I can see, by the way, here that my video camera has frozen. This actually happened to me the other day, but I know for a fact that we're still recording, so I'm just going to let it ride, and you're going to see me with that stupid expression the rest of the way.
That works.
Yeah. So what did you think about the new 007?
Well, my problem with the movie, and this may sound weird, is that it sort of cut its audience, or I don't know if that's the right terminology, cut its audience, but it looks back too much, and it looks back on a movie that is very, as I said in my review, divisive to Bond fans, because for some reason, and everyone knows this is Daniel Craig's last Bond movie, so you'd think they'd want to do something to move the franchise forward. Instead, they sort of made it like, okay, here's our farewell to Daniel Craig as 007, and this is how we're going to do it, by looking back at a movie that, if you put 10 Bond franchise fans in a room, 5 would say, we love this movie, and 5 would say, we don't like this movie.
Yeah.
And it's because all of one actor. And it's because the movie, if I'm not giving too much away, is on Her Majesty's Secret Service, and the actor is George Lazenby.
Yeah.
A bit of history. That was the first Bond movie without Sean Connery. He retired after Live and Let, You Only Live Twice. And they brought in Lazenby. And basically, The last time I watched the movie, I realized what the problem is. They wanted Lazenby to act like Sean Connery instead of letting him be George Lazenby, who at the time, whoever that was, I think he was a male model, really hadn't had much acting experience. And in the beginning of the movie, they break the fourth wall. I don't want to give too much away, but at the beginning of the movie, in the pre-credits sequence, he turns to the camera, looks into the camera, and says, "This never happened to the other fellow."
Yeah.
So right then and there, there is that they're telling you, okay, we're doing something different, but they're really not. They have, it's still Spectre, it's Blofeld, and it's George Lazenby acting or trying to act like Sean Connery instead of not giving him his head so much, but saying, okay, let your own personality, find your own way of being Bond. So I like that movie. A lot of people like that movie, but a lot of people don't like it because they resent George Lazenby just simply because he's not Sean Connery.
Yeah.
And so, when you're watching No Time to Die, there's all these throwbacks, musical cues, a couple lines of dialogue that remind you of On Her Majesty's Secret Service. And to me, that's sort of cheap sentiment. Why couldn't they just come up with their own way to pay tribute to Craig and move the franchise forward?
Yeah. And there is some of that. There's a little bit of that, a lot of callbacks of characters and themes from the previous Craig movies, where it was almost just sort of like, hey, we're just trying these people out here to say goodbye.
Exactly.
Because we may or may not bring them back for the next iteration of Bond. Felix Leiter's character, Blofeld is back. And they're in the movie, but they're not in the movie for a long time.
Right. It's like guest appearances.
Blofeld is, I'm not giving anything away, Blofeld is not the main villain in this, although he does turn up. So there's a little bit of that last episode of Seinfeld feel to it, where it's like, we're just going to trot everybody out here and they get their moment. So that part, but overall, I thought it was solid Bond, definitely not top tier, maybe like that second tier of Bond films. My actual complaint about the film, where I think it is really weak, is actually the villain, with Rami Malek as the villain. Who just does not make an impression. He doesn't even really truly show up in the movie until halfway through. Safin is his name. And here's the bad thing about that character is, if you were to go through afterwards and say, what is his motivation? Why is he doing his terrible, dastardly plot? What's he after? What's his goal? I couldn't tell you. I don't know what he's trying to do. There's a thing early on where, his father and family was killed by another spy, and now he sort of took his revenge, but that part was over and done with. And why he's trying to do what he's doing now, I never understood. He's just this guy. He's very quiet and passive. He has a scarred face from the assassination attempt, and I just thought it was this very passive, underwhelming Bond villain.
Okay, where were we?
You were going to say about Rami Malek.
Yeah, I think he was a rather weak and passive villain myself. He, Christoph Waltz, who only had, like a cameo as Blofeld, seemed to have more menace and gravitas than Rami Malek. It's just, he seemed too young and too, I don't know if this is the right phraseology, maybe effeminate. He just didn't scare me. I mean, he wasn't an equal in presence to Daniel Craig's Bond.
Yeah, I agree. Interesting point. So we've now had a female 007 in this film. We've never had a female Bond villain, have we? I mean, we've had like henchmen or henchwoman.
Right.
That's an interesting thing. Why can't we have a female Bond villain?
Why can't we have a female Bond? But that's beside the point.
Yeah. Well,
That's getting off track.
speaking of, let's wrap this up by talking about the future of Bond. What do you want to see for the next iteration of Bond? Do you even want to see another Bond? And if so, what do you want to see?
I don't know, because I don't want to give away anything, but the way this movie ended, it looks like they may have to go back to the beginning. Maybe start with Bond in like Harry Potter, Bond in spy school, and, you know, find someone, you know, younger, and just, I don't know if they want to move the movie forward or go back in time and, you know, take it back to the era of the Cold War, which, you know, Bond is a product of the Cold War.
Yeah. Yeah.
So whether, you know, how they do it, I don't know. It all depends on how they decide to cast Bond, I guess. I mean, you hear all this talk about, you know, who's going to be the next Bond. Is it going to be Tom Hardy? Is it going to be, you know, Idris Elba? Is it going to be the guy from whatever that Netflix show was, the hot sex symbol guy from there? Who knows? You know, we'll just have to see where they go. But I'm thinking they should retire. I think Bond's past his prime, and time has passed Bond by.
Yeah, I think there's definitely an argument to be made for that, but even if the current people who are making it or at the studio say, sure, yeah, we're gonna retire Bond for good, you know that 5 or 10 years from now, someone's gonna say we're sitting on this huge intellectual property that, you know, we can crank out a movie we know we're gonna make a profit on. So I don't think Bond's gonna go away.
Neither do I.
Yeah. The Idris Elba question, if there was another actor out there who I think would be great as Bond, I think it's Idris. The question is age. I think he's actually older than Daniel Craig, who was,
I think so,
just bumping up against starting to get a little old for the role. He probably could have done 1, maybe 2 more movies, but after that, really would have been getting a sticking point. So I don't know if Idris Elba is young enough to take. I think he's 53 or 54. That's a pretty old to take over Bond, unless he's going to just do a one-off, which I wouldn't want to see that. Yeah. I don't know.
I think
I would actually like to see it maybe go back to the opposite of where it's been, and go back to like the Roger Moore, fun, lots of sex and hijinks, just because we haven't seen that now for 40 years. And I'd be interested to see that. 35, whatever it was since his last.
Maybe they can get who's the guy? The guy who did the Johnny English films, Rowan Atkinson. Yeah, make him Bond then.
That would be definitely a new take. All right, Bob. Thanks very much for joining me. Appreciate it. And everyone out there, hope you're enjoying these podcasts, vodcasts, whatever we're going to call them, even with our technical difficulties. And if I can just say, the people out there who develop Zoom, you suck and your app sucks. See you guys.
Bye.